news gang is here, from the ballot to the bullet, and now the brotherhood. How long can 2 years be in Kenya? The skeleton at anniversary towers. We look at the men and women who voted with their feet and those who are left counting the losses. Also, news gang, has the judiciary been revisited, or is the jury still out? We'll also have the memo, the kicker, the punchline, and the angle. Yvonne is away on a break tonight. Welcome to the show. Lady and gentlemen, Jamila, today I said lady.
I heard.
Now, what a 2-year period it has been in this country. I mean, when you look at the people, for example, right now, and we will start there because there are many things to talk about 2 years after August 8th, 2017. And you look at Kenyans walking around, you hear Kenyans talk. What are Kenyans talking about right now? What are they like compared to 18?
Well,
17, I should say.
I've seen memes doing round today. That msijifanya mkumbuki leo 2 years ago guys from the Mount Kenya region ilikuwa kumera.
Yes.
That kutokelezea. And 2 years later,
my village mates were saying hakuna story of taxi.
And 2 years later, you will hear murmurs about some of the choices that people made at the ballot. There's also some regret. Some of the leaders that were elected, both at the national and county level, some members of the public, or generally the electorate, are saying maybe they made the wrong choices at the ballot. And there are also some good things. There are people who are saying, yes, we elected the right leaders in some positions. And an opinion poll was conducted recently that indicated that 48% of Kenyans think we are not headed in the right direction. 2 years after a general election, that tells you that probably some of their expectations have not been met. But it also offers an opportunity, a 3-year opportunity for the leaders who are elected in various positions to make up and recoup maybe that lost ground in the last 2 years.
But a very interesting thing, Francis, that conversations can change that quickly. I mean, the last 2 years, if you think about 8th of August 2017, and even the few days that followed, you actually would hear the conversations, the tone. There was palpable tension in the country, and you hear people talk right now. The expectations are totally different from what probably they had in mind. The experience has been totally different from what they thought would happen. Jamila?
Yes, Joe, what you just said, there's a lot different for a lot of people. And I think as we speak, Robert, if you can hear me, you can just show us images of the Kenyans who are lining up to vote very early in the morning from 3 a.m. walitokelezea kila mahali.
You said kumera.
Yeah, kupiga kura. You can see those
what does that mean actually?
It's like a clarion call for turnout and vote. Turnout in large numbers.
Okay. And that was it. Look at them, people coming out in large numbers to vote. And I think this happens in every major election in Kenya. People are passionate enough to come out and vote. Whether they're voting the leaders for the right reasons, the jury is still out. But you talk about perception, and a recent study that was done by Transparency International showed that to Kenyans, the worst thing that they're facing now is corruption. Compared to like the same survey was done like a year ago, it has gone up considerably. Like over 71% of Kenyans felt that corruption is the biggest problem we have, and that the government is not doing enough to fight it. That's one. And two, they keep thinking about the leaders that they elected. They keep, and you talk about some feel their regrets and some feel that
they made the right
choice, but a lot of them, a large percentage of them felt that maybe the leaders they picked at that time were not the right ones because of this corruption purge. And they're happy about the fact that a lot of them are being arrested, and a lot of them, we're seeing a lot more people being brought before courts, and a lot of people being charged. But for them, this perception that they have about the kind of leaders that they picked, a huge percentage of them, a larger percentage as compared to maybe previous years, believe that they did not make the right choice on the number of on the leaders that they picked.
Linus, you travel a lot around this country. You hear what people are saying. If you compare the things people expected and what they're saying now, 2 years later, what are you hearing?
Disappointment, as Jamila correctly put out there in that survey. There are obviously questions about the expectations that people had. When people line up like this, like you're seeing in these images, it's because they have specific expectations about the future. They are putting their future in the hands of the people they are going to vote for. But as all the surveys are indicating, things are not good. They have not been good. Whether it's the economy, whether it's the practice of governance, there are so many things that have not gone the right way. But again, the other question, of course, is the place of the voter in the entire maxim of things when it comes to how the country is governed. How do they feel? Because the 2017 election, 2 of them across, I think, was it 60 days, were both very disputed. They were inconclusive. They were not really decisive. One of them, the first one, was outrightly nullified by the Supreme Court. So there are questions, of course, as to whether it made any difference for voters to turn up and vote. Is the outcome what they said? And that has been a question for the last 3 elections in this country. I think the last election I remember where everybody thought they have expressed themselves and it is their voice that is being heard was in 2002. The subsequent elections after that, you feel like people are complaining. They're not sure who has spoken.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because Francis, these people who line up to vote, some people would say, like, I mean, why would they be disappointed about the expectations not being met, while actually every year, every election year, they go and vote for the very same people, some of them accused of all manner of things. You don't get the sense that we vote for the right reasons, and then we get surprised 2-3 years down the road when the leaders don't do what we thought they would do, even though we knew in the first place they probably might not.
Therein lies the problem. In fact, there's this often spoken about narrative that Kenyans don't elect leaders, they vote out leaders. Let's say you're a parliamentarian and people will not necessarily be voting in Jamila because she's offering better prospects, but because they want to remove you from that.
Anyone but Jamila in that case.
Yeah. In fact, some jokes have even been made about, even if a goat vied against a certain candidate, that goat would win. Of course, those are jokes. But
no, there was no joke. Actually, JJ Kamodo once said, when he lost the election in 2002, he said, actually, in that part of the world, even if a dog had stood, as long as that dog was not standing on a Kanu ticket, they would have won. You remember that story? He said
I remember the election, and that was when Ford Asili was the party to beat in Murang'a.
It was actually
County.
92,
Yes.
Isn't it? It
So
was
Ford
when
Asili would be
Matiba was very
Murang'a,
big.
DP in Nyeri. So and of course Kamodo was a very staunch
the first multi-party election.
And that explains maybe some of the challenges we face as a country as a result of our choices at the ballot. Look at the turnover, for example, in Parliament. Recently, there were complaints about the performance of our parliamentarians. Some who have not even spoken or made any contribution in the House, save for the day they were sworn in. And even the quality of debates in the House. But look at it this way. About 70% of the members in the 11th Parliament did not make it back to the 12th Parliament. So when you have new members who have to come, learn the ropes, get oriented, by the time they adjust to the job of a parliamentarian, it will take them about a year or 2 or thereabout. By the time they really fit into the system, we're already talking about another election. There's that question of longevity in politics and in certain positions to make you a better person, to make you a better leader, to orient you perfectly for that job. But be it as it may, it's also a question of, as the electorate, are we well informed about the choices that we make? For example, when you elect a member of the county assembly, do we know their functions? Do the electorate know the functions of a parliamentarian, of a governor, of the president, such that you don't end up asking a parliamentarian why he has not done A, B, C, D, yet those are functions of a governor, and vice versa.
Joe, something he said that brings to mind leadership and those who stand up to be elected as leaders. And I see it, this is just my personal opinion, that our leaders, immediately they're elected, they start thinking about the next election. So already in your mind, you're thinking about, what should I do to be elected again? You made promises to the people. That's part of the reason why they elected you. But already, ushaingia pale, you're already thinking about, what do I do to get elected again? Chances are maybe the first year or two, mtoka bado uko katika sherehe mode, zinatagwa zile parties zile homecoming. Yeah, homecoming inafanyika nini. But the third year, you start realizing, oh, I've not promises ambazo nilimake sija keep. Then you start thinking about about how to start raising money for the next campaign period, the next election is coming, you start making new promises again. You've not fulfilled the ones from last time. So sometimes I feel that some of our leaders enter into this for the wrong reasons, because they come in already umechaguliwa and you start thinking about nitachaguliwa tena lini. And I think it's also important for us as voters to think about who we're electing, because clearly in Kenya we elect people because of maybe the tribe they come from or the party. Sometimes it's not even the individual. It depends on which party you are standing on, because there are some areas where if you stand on a particular party, kiti ni yako, it's a shoo-in. That's why nominations are actually a bigger battle than the actual general election. So I think it's up to us to think about what kind of leaders we want, who have the mindsets to actually help the people.
I think, Joe, what needs to be considered is the environment around which the voter is making the decision, because it depends on what is going on at the time. What is it that they are voting for? What our politicians have learned, and they do it so well, is to make elections about a life and death matter, especially about the ethnic group or a region or a family, into narrow spaces. It's not about those big things. We know very well, and we need to give credit to voters, what they can do in a free environment. I want to give a very interesting example, and this is my own observation of the 2017 election. There was a big difference between the nominations and the actual election. In my view, the real election was, for example, the Jubilee nominations in Kiambu County.
Absolutely.
Where people are very clear-minded. They were talking of cover. Bila, is that? No. They were getting rid of Kabogo at the time.
Actually, he said at that time, you guys will remove me, but you will regret. That's why he was saying, you know, that.
Afadhali, yeah.
Isn't that happening now?
But the clarity of the voter, I remember, and especially because I was interacting with voters at that time, and this election was held across 2 days. There was a repeat that was ordered, and they said, no, we're going back to do exactly the same thing. Now, that's what voting is supposed to be. These people are not voting about tribe. They are voting about a particular quality of leadership that they were looking for. Now, Kiambu was not looking for. It was looking at first firing Kabogo. Yeah. I think that was bigger than whoever replaces him. So it's not like.
I was very curious to hear about the quality issue in Kiambu, but it's a story for another.
No, the decision was get rid of him, get rid of Kabogo.
Yeah,
whatever you replace him with. Yeah. And that was a decision of the voters. Yeah. So you can't fault them. They have their own reasons. Now, obviously, they are talking a different language. But the point I'm making here is the environment has been different. If you look at 2002, that was a change election. There was this atmosphere that assumed that President Moi was running, and you would see people saying we are going to remove him because he was not he was not a candidate.
Yes.
I went to a polling station.
You don't remember? I mean, the clarion call at that time was yote yawezekana bila Moi. Never mind that Moi was actually not going to be.
Now look at that. The size or the enormity of that kind of objective. It's non-ethnic. It's national. There's a way it resonates across the country, and that's what I had. I remember going to a polling station in Kayole in 2002, and I was interviewing the voters, and then one came and told me, "Nimefuta mtu kazi." Nimefuta mtu kazi. When you interpret that, who have you fired? Moi is not on the ballot, but the idea was we are sacking Kanu. That was the last time, in my view, that we held an election that was more about issues than anything else. What was 2017? 2017 and 2013 and 2007 were fear elections. Go scare your community to the maximum about the other guy, and you scare your community about the other guy to the maximum. And it became a contest of fears.
But I would think comparatively, I saw a bit more of issues in 2017 than in 2013. At least I saw a contest between the then NASA and Jubilee, for example, over free day secondary education. on one hand, the NASA team was saying we will offer it immediately. Jubilee was saying we will do it in January. There were a bit of issues in terms of, you know.
But Francis, do you believe people actually went to the polling station
I
and
think
said,
the question
I'm choosing secondary education?
would be that's now, okay, let me vote for Jubilee because theirs is immediately, let me vote for this
not
guy.
necessarily.
Nobody did
there were still factors, as Lina says, but at least in terms of the content that you saw in public rallies, it wasn't as polarizing as we saw in 2013 and 2007, but it could be better.
Let me just differ very quickly.
Yeah, so that we
in
move
terms
this
of comparison,
a little bit. Yeah.
I want to compare 2017 and 2013. 2013 was a very disciplined election. There were so many factors, including the ICC cloud that was hanging over everyone's head. So politicians were watching the language, they were watching their moves and everything. So in 2013, in my view, 2013 was a better election than.
But the fear factor was bigger because you see, actually, the communities were mobilized, especially the president and his deputy. Then both of them just candidates. Actually, there are people who believe that they mobilized around the question of the ICC. That these people are coming for us. Please, can you?
In a more subtle way than they did in 2017. 2017 was an outright tribal mobilization exercise on both sides.
Okay, guys, let's move this a little bit to the IEBC or whatever is left of it, because quite frankly, yeah, you know, it's a very interesting situation at Anniversary Towers. You have Chebukati there, you have the two commissioners. Someone pointed to me that they come from one half of the country, that like if you were to talk about the face of Kenya, because that's something that people care about in this country, that right now you don't actually see that. It is a very strange situation there. The CEO was kicked out of office, and as things stand now, I mean, no one really knows what's going to happen there, but quite interestingly, no one seems to care.
No one seems to care, Joe, because 2 years ago, around this time, IEBC was one of the most scrutinized bodies. And I think before we continue, we can maybe show when
last
they announced
major
the
act.
elections.
The last major act, which was the announcement of the last election results.
Of a fully constituted IBC.
Yeah.
I said, I wish to declare Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta as President-elect and Honorable William Ruto as the Deputy President-elect. I now wish to present the certificate to the President-elect and the Deputy President-elect.
As you said, that was when people cared what the IEBC said and did.
Yeah,
but then
controversial, whatever they did, but you can see a full commission there. You see Connie Maina behind there. You see Roslyn Akombe. You see Professor Gulie sitting there. You see Chebukati, surrounded by people from the commission.
Exactly. And now, the latest act, I think, that reminded people that IEBC wako is the verification of signatures for Punguza Mzigo. Before then, IEBC walikuwa shasahaulika. After that, because now one by one, they all started kuondoka. It started with Akombe. I think she was the first one who went, and then the other three, Nkata and Connie Maina, and the other commissioner left, also Kurgat. And in fact, that is an impasse that has not really been solved because of issues of law and all that. But still, I think for me, 2 years ago, no one would have thought that 2 years later, in 2019, that we'd have the IEBC that we have now. Doesn't have enough commissioners. Two, is not as important, is not under scrutiny. In fact, it doesn't even have a CEO right now as we speak. But I think for me, it kind of shows us that maybe this election was not what either of them expected it to be in terms of what the fallout was afterwards. But that's just me.
The pressure that the IEBC team was under is clearly immense. It was immense. But also, it was a problem that anybody could have seen. How you constitute a commission in January to conduct an election in August was obviously problematic. They were going to have challenges. And also the reason for the exit of the previous commission and how this new commission came into place is a story for another day. But suffice to say, after in 2 years, probably we should have had a better discussion in terms of reconstituting that commission, or in any case appointing replacements for the 4 commissioners who exited, so that you give them ample time to prepare for the 2022 general election. And even before that, any scenario that is related to the commission. For example, we have boundaries delimitation exercise that is coming up shortly, and we hear talk of a referendum. We don't have a fully constituted commission, and you hear of a referendum maybe next year or thereabout. So those are some of the indicators that maybe we need to have a serious discussion around IEBC. But I would think maybe that discussion is awaiting the report of the Building Bridges Initiative. Maybe once they hand in their report, probably next month or thereabout, you will now hear a renewed discussion around the reconstitution.
But isn't that right IEBC? There our problem? Because I know that even in its skeletal form, this IEBC did a bit of a review of what happened. And made some interesting recommendations. One of the things, of course, they were saying, for example, is the period between the nomination or the appointment of the commissioners and the election. Yes. They were saying something like 2 years before the election, and they were talking about staggering this so that you don't have the commissioners leaving at the same time, because they have a fixed term, 7 years. Once it's done, is it 6? Yeah?
6 years.
6 years. Once it is done, they get out of office. So they get out all of them, and then you have to get new ones who would then come. So right now would be a great time to pick others, because then it means that these ones will leave, and at least leave some people with institutional memory and that sort of thing. But no one is paying attention to that, Linus, in spite of the fact that they have said certain things, including staggering of elections so that you don't have all 6 at the same time. But as long as the fundamental questions about the nature and composition of IEBC remains unresolved, no one seems to be listening to anything else they're talking about.
Joe, I want to paraphrase some Masai saying that says, and this is a paraphrase now, that if it doesn't have feathers, it can't fly. It cannot fly. Don't expect it to fly. When you look at that IEBC, even when it was fully constituted, this was one of the weakest teams ever assembled to carry out an election. The selection committee was made up of heavyweights, and I remember the team that really selected this team to oversee the election. This IEBC did that time and still does lack character. It lacks people that can withstand the pressure that comes with managing elections. They don't have a Kivuitu. They don't have Mukele. They don't have what is his name? Situma?
Well,
Situma.
Which one there?
The ECK team.
Yes.
Yeah, we all remember that team. It was made up of very strong people, people you can trust with pressure that comes with an election. You see, when you are running an election, when you are running the IEBC, it means you are the boss of the politicians, not a subject of those politicians. Look at the body language when they were announcing the results. You know, they looked as if they had been sent for something and they have just delivered it, that here it is. They lack the strength, they lack the personality and character that is supposed to attend to that office. Now, you say correctly, Joe.
I think you must have been talking about Tumwa, because I was trying to remember. I was trying to remember that name in my head. Jack Tumwa, Ambassador Tumwa. Yes.
It's Jack Tumwa. And you know, they would project authority. You can trust them with what they are saying. And I remember when the results were being delayed, I think from Wajir in northern Kenya in 2002. Look at how they handled the pressure from NAC at the time. And they were handling it very, very well. If this team faced NAC, a transition election like we had in 2002, we could have been in a bigger mess as a country.
Or if they had KICC to deal with.
If they had KICC to deal with.
Why, 2002?
Yeah, they cannot handle KICC. Now, this should inform going forward the recruitment of a team that can run the election. First of all, the team must be politically savvy. 2, it must be made of people who have a spine. political and otherwise, and even physical spying.
Some people say, Jamila, that this team made even the Isaac Hassan team look like the greatest commission we've ever had.
Remember?
Absolutely.
In spite of all the problems
and all the efforts that are put in to get them out. Remember the riots? Every Tuesday,
it was Monday.
It was every Monday we'd have
Machozi
Mondays just to
yes.
get them out, and they were gotten out. But I think afterwards I'm sure there was a bit of regret because of the duration you're talking about. It was too soon to the election to bring in a new team to start all over again. At least these guys had done
but
the
too
previous
soon
election.
to do what? Because much of the work is
done by the Secretariat.
By the Secretariat. And that's the team that we need to give credit. They kept things going, and they still do. You see, commissioners only come in to oversee, meaning that there is a team of administrators, the backroom team, that works very, very well day and night to keep things going. Without a very good backroom team, the commissioners will not do much. And I want to suggest that the last two elections were really delivered more because of the strength of the Secretariat.
But did they have those arguments?
But also there's a challenge there. Remember the wrangles between the chairman and the head of the Secretariat.
The CEO, yes.
That was one of the areas that really exposed IEBC. Then it was also a lesson that for a functional electoral commission, the Secretariat and the commissioners must work together. And because the commissioners are the policy makers, the Secretariat implements the policies of the commissioners. So if the commissioners make the wrong policies, if they interfere with the implementation of the policies, if they want to infiltrate and direct maybe issues like procurement, you will have a big problem, because here are commissioners who you don't see their power per se, but in terms of functions, in terms of budgets, the Secretariat is there. If there's interference, you will have a problem like we had between Chebukati and Chiloba. But one is saying this and the other one is saying the other thing.
In all fairness to the commission, when you look at this IEBC, there are a lot of questions on how CEO Ezra Chiloba executed the office of CEO. He was looking like a center of power on his own, basically running other affairs and wanting the chairman to be, as ceremonial as possible. You are completely right. That kind of friction doesn't work. It will lead to insubordination of the commission and the kind of problems that we saw in 2017.
And probably it was because this guy had been running the show all this while when there were actually no commissioners there. Plus, there are many people who have suggested that the interference we were talking about appeared to have split that commission. So the Secretariat, the head of the Secretariat, some people would say the interference may have been going to the Secretariat differently from the commission. So you actually had two centers of power pulling in different direction, being pulled by different political sides.
Also the division in terms of the members of staff. For example, we had stories of members of staff who are allied to the CEO and members of staff who are allied to the chairman. And there was also some sort of confusion, because if you get instructions from the chairman of the commission and you get contrary instructions from the CEO, whose instructions do you take? And that led to a serious split within the commission, and you could clearly see it. It also talks about the level of preparedness, because some of the issues that you hear, for example, like the technology that was used in the transfer of results from polling stations to the National Tallying Center, even the amount of training that went into it, how that system was procured, those are substantive issues that come up and point to a division between the Secretariat and the Commission. And maybe this is a lesson for future commissions and the Secretariat. If they can't work together, then there is a problem.
I think we were talking about future. Linus, 1 second before you continue. I think now we need to look at the impasse surrounding the IEBC, the fact that we do not have a fully constituted one, and we have an election. Listening to politicians talking now, you think we have an election kesho kutwa, but we have an election in 2022. And as you said, they need to have a commission in place soon enough to be able to prepare for that coming election, because there are different dynamics in these elections. You can't compare 2017 or 2013. And of course, there are a lot of political interests in it. As I was saying, the way politicians are talking now, you'd think the elections is next year. It's in 2022, yes. But now we need to start looking at what is going on now in IEBC about fully constituting it as a commission, a full a full commission to be able now start thinking about the election in 2022?
The question that comes up is IEBC commissioners currently, Chebukati, Gulie, and Boya Molu, they keep arguing that the constitution allows 3 to 9 commissioners. So their argument, their interpretation is that we are fully constituted.
Wow.
All right,
Shall
we
we
need to take a break.
Shall we take a break now on that fully constituted note? We'll be right back.